Rawhide bites into Anna's wrists, her bare feet numb on the frozen planks. "Who will take her?" her father bellows, the clink of coins already echoing in her ears. A rancher's shadow falls across her, his gaze not on the burn scar marring her face, but something deeper she doesn't yet recognize, and breath turned to ice in the air. Beneath the gray sky, townsfolk huddled around fires or bartered loudly over sacks of grain and leather goods. But today, the attention of the crowd shifted toward a wooden post near the center of the square. Tied tightly to it was a girl, barefoot, bruised, her torn dress barely shielding her from the cold. She was 20, but her hollowed cheeks and downturned eyes made her look older. A large, jagged burn scar marred the left side of her face, pulling the skin tight from her jaw to her cheekbone. Her hands, bound behind her, were red and raw from rope and frost. Her father stood beside her, puffed up with drink and bitterness, shouting above the wind. "Who will take her?" he called, voice slurred with contempt. "A fine wife, strong and silent. She don't talk back, and she don't cost much. Hell, I'll take the best offer right now." The crowd laughed, some in disbelief, others in cruel delight. "What's wrong with her face?" someone called out. "Burned it years ago," the father spat. "Set the whole damn kitchen on fire. Killed her sister too, the pretty one. This one's just a useless, scarred thing now." Useless, more laughter. A woman nearby muttered, "Poor thing should have died with the fire. She ain't even got shoes." Another man jeered. Anna kept her eyes on the snow beneath her feet, her breath shallow. She did not speak, did not flinch. The cold had taken the feeling from her toes hours ago. Her hair hung in frozen tangles, and her lips were cracked with blood. Then came the sound of boots, slow, deliberate, not rushed like the rest. Spurs clinked softly with each step. A man approached through the crowd. He wore a long wool coat lined with fur dusted white at the shoulders. A wide-brimmed hat shielded his face, but when he raised his head, the hush in the square was sudden. His eyes were calm, steady, and unlike the others. He did not sneer. He looked at the father first. "How much?" he asked plainly. The father blinked. "You serious?" The man did not answer. Instead, he reached into his coat and tossed a small leather pouch to the ground. It landed with a heavy clink of coin. The father scooped it up, fingers shaking greedily. "She's all yours." The man nodded once and stepped forward. As he untied the ropes from Anna's wrists, she swayed slightly but did not fall. Her skin was mottled with bruises, wrists rubbed raw. She pulled her hands close to her chest, still refusing to meet his eyes. He crouched, reaching toward her gently, but she turned her face away, her voice barely audible. "Don't look at me." He froze for a breath. Then, without a word, he shrugged off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. The wool was warm, lined with thick shearling. It hung down past her knees, swallowing her frame. He did not touch her face, did not flinch, did not stare. Instead, he dropped to one knee on the floor, leaning forward, his voice soft and sure. "You're beautiful. Be my wife." Anna stood still, her breath catching in her throat. For the first time, her fingers stopped trembling. Her eyes, wide with disbelief, flickered toward his, but only for a second. The crowd had gone quiet. Whispers passed like wind between buildings. No one laughed now. The man placed a hand on the small of her back and guided her gently forward. No one stopped them. No one dared. And just like that, through falling snow and silent stairs, the girl they had called a burden walked away beside the man who saw her as something worth saving. The snow crunched softly beneath their boots. As they walked, William led the horse with one hand, his other resting calmly by his side. Anna, wrapped in his oversized coat, kept her eyes on the ground, her bare feet tucked awkwardly into the hem to preserve what little warmth she could find. Neither of them spoke. The silence was not heavy. It was careful, like a glass floor neither dared to step too hard upon. But in Anna's mind, the silence echoed louder than words ever could. 10 years ago, the fire had started with a pan of grease. She had been 10, trying to cook stew the way her mother used to before her mother got too sick to leave the bed. The flames had spread fast, licking the curtains, swallowing the walls. She remembered screaming for help. She remembered the smoke. She remembered her little sister's voice from the other room, soft and confused. Anna. Then she remembered nothing but heat and afterward, silence permanent. Her sister never spoke again, never laughed again, never braided flowers into Anna's hair, or stole apples from the pantry with a mischievous grin. Her name had been Elsie. She was 8 years old. Anna woke 3 days later, her face wrapped in linen, her throat raw from screaming. Her mother died weeks after, grief eating her faster than the illness ever could. And her father, he was never the same. You should have died instead, he said once. He said it often. She heard it again in her head, now louder than the wind. The way he looked at her year after year, like she was a broken tool he could not throw away, but never wanted to use. She became the ghost of her sister's shadow, the reminder of all he lost. His punishments grew harsher as she grew older. Sometimes it was the back of his hand. Sometimes it was worse. But always it was his words that cut deepest, scarred and stupid. No man will ever want you. You were born cursed. Even fire tried to take you. Should have let it. Those words lingered in her bones, etched deeper than the burn on her skin. Today had been the final blow, tied to that post, her shame on display. And yet the only thing worse than the crowd's laughter was the sound of coins clinking in her father's hand as he sold her like a mule. She swallowed hard and glanced up at William. He had not asked her name, had not questioned the scar. He walked beside her now in silence, glancing ahead as if the world behind them held no meaning. But Anna's thoughts were not silent. She wondered why he helped her, what he wanted, what he saw. When he looked at her, she wrapped the coat tighter, pulling the collar up to her cheek. The burns stung in the cold, a reminder that it would always be there. She turned away slightly, avoiding his gaze, though he was not even looking at her. He must have sensed her unease. His hands shifted on the horse's reins, slowing the pace to match hers more precisely. Still, he said nothing. Not a word to force comfort, not a question to demand explanation. Just quiet, kind, careful, quiet. Anna could not remember the last time someone walked beside her without fear, disgust, or orders. No one had ever shielded her from a crowd. No one had ever covered her shoulders with warmth or looked into her eyes without flinching. Even now she expected him to break the silence, to say something cruel, to regret his decision, but he did not. The snow kept falling. The wind whispered through pines ahead, and William walked beside her as if he had all the time in the world. Anna took one slow breath, then another. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it would not last. But for the first time in 10 years, she did not feel completely alone. The sun had long dipped behind the snow-capped hills. By the time they reached the edge of William's land, the wind had quieted to a low hush, and smoke drifted gently from the chimney of a small wooden cabin tucked between the trees. A simple place, no more than 3 rooms and a barn out back, but it stood firm against the cold, with golden light spilling from the windows like a welcome. Anna hesitated at the door, her body half turned as if ready to flee. William opened the door ahead of her and stepped aside without a word. He did not urge her forward, only waited. After a moment, she crossed the threshold. Warmth hit her like a wave. The scent of burning cedar filled the space. A small fire crackled in the hearth, and thick woolen blankets were folded neatly on the edge of a sturdy wooden bench. On the table, a bowl of stew steamed beside a tin cup of water. She stood in the center of the room, still wrapped in his coat, afraid to move, as if one step might break whatever spell had brought her here. William knelt by the fire, placing a kettle over the flames. Then he stood and disappeared into a side room, returning moments later with a basin, a towel, and a worn but clean bar of soap. He set them down gently by the fire, then met her eyes. "It is warm," he said simply, "for your feet." Anna looked down at her bruised, numb toes, still blue from the cold. She had not even realized how badly they hurt until now. He turned away again, giving her space. She watched as he moved around the small cabin, lighting a second oil lamp and stoking the fire without looking at her. He did everything with quiet efficiency, as though he had done it all 1,000 times. But never once did she feel like an intruder. Still, the tightness in her chest would not ease. Her fingers dug into the fabric of the coat, and after a long pause, she found her voice. "Are you doing this because you pity me?" Her words hung in the air, thin and sharp. William looked up from where he stood by the fire. His expression did not change. "No," he said. "I am doing this because you deserve to be treated like a person." And a blink, the simplicity of it cut deeper than any elaborate kindness. No one had said anything like that to her. Not since her mother died, not in 10 years of being spoken to like a curse, a mistake, a burden. She tried to speak again, but her throat tightened. Her knees gave out before she realized she was falling. She dropped to the wooden floor beside the fire, the coat pooling around her, and covered her face with both hands. The tears came fast, hot, silent, uncontrollable. It was not just the fire in the hearth that warmed her. It was the words, the room, the absence of judgment. It was William's back turned respectfully as she wept, not out of shame, but because he knew what dignity looked like. For the first time in years, Anna cried not from pain, not from fear, but because someone had looked at her, not as a burden or a body to be bought, but as a human being. Outside, the wind shifted direction, whistling softly against the shutters. Inside, in a cabin lit by firelight and fragile beginnings, a scarred girl let herself fall apart, just enough to begin stitching back together. The days passed slowly, softened by routine. The snow outside the cabin thickened with each morning, but inside Anna began to move through the space like she belonged. Not quite with ease, but with growing familiarity. She learned where William kept the dry wood, how he liked his coffee black, how the chestnut mare in the barn responded best to a gentle voice. She cooked when she could, swept the floor, fed the chickens. Little things, small, steady things that reminded her of who she used to be before the fire, before the shame. But still, she avoided mirrors, and still she avoided William's gaze. He never forced her to speak, never asked for more than what she gave. But she caught his eyes on her sometimes, quietly, cautiously, like he was studying a fragile map. She hated that it made her heart race. One morning, as the sky outside shifted from gray to pale blue, Anna stood at the wash basin beside the fire. Her scarf had grown damp, so she removed it to dry, thinking William had gone to the barn to check on the animals. She dipped her hands into the basin, rubbing warmth into her fingers. Behind her, the door opened. She turned just as William stepped inside, boots heavy with snow. He stopped mid-step, startled to see her without the scarf. Their eyes met, and in that half second, everything froze. Anna's breath hitched, then her expression twisted, panic rising like a flood. "Do not look at me like that," she snapped, her voice shaking. William's brow furrowed, confused. "Like what?" "Like the others," she said, backing away. "Like I disgust you." He stepped forward instinctively. "Anna?" He raised her hand between them, trembling. "You are just like them. You stare and flinch and pretend not to. You said I was beautiful, but you were lying." "I did not lie." "Yes, you did." Her voice cracked. "You looked at me, really looked. And now you see what they all saw." The burn scar was angry and red in the firelight, a jagged reminder that refused to fade. Her whole body trembled, not from cold, but from fear. Fear that the one person who had shown her kindness would finally turn away. William said nothing. He closed the door behind him, slow and calm, then stepped toward her, one measured step at a time. She backed against the table, heart pounding in her throat. "I said, 'Do not look at me,'" she whispered again, softer now, pleading. But he did. He stopped just in front of her, eyes locked on hers. Not on the scar, not on the pain, just her. And then gently he lifted one hand. Anna flinched, but his touch was warm and steady as he placed his palm against the side of her face, his thumb brushing the curve of the burn. "I am not afraid," he whispered. His voice held no pity, no revulsion, only quiet certainty. "This scar does not make you ugly. It proves you survived." Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. She shook her head once, confused, disbelieving. "Why would you say that?" "Because it is true." Then with no urgency, no force, he leaned forward and pressed a kiss to the scar. Not her lips, not her hand, but the place she hated most, the place she had hidden from the world for 10 long years. Anna gasped softly, the world tilting beneath her. No one had ever touched that part of her without flinching. No one had ever dared kiss it as if it deserved affection instead of shame. She could not speak. William stepped back, not asking for anything, not expecting a response. He simply turned away, moved to the fire, and added another log. Behind him, Anna touched her cheek. The place still burned, but not from memory. It was something else entirely. It was a quiet morning when the peace broke. Anna was feeding the chickens, her scarf pulled low against the wind, when she saw the dust rising on the road. A wagon pulled by two horses creaked into view, followed by the dark, hunched figure of a man who had no place in her new world. Her heart dropped into her stomach. She turned and walked quickly toward the cabin. William met her halfway, sensing something wrong in the tension of her shoulders. He looked past her and saw the man climbing down from the wagon with heavy boots and heavier breath. Anna's father, he did not wait for invitation. He stomped toward the porch, eyes full of contempt, voice already raised. "There she is," he barked, hiding like some kept thing. "You got her dressed up like a wife now, cowboy?" William said nothing. His hand rested calmly on the railing. The old man turned his gaze on him. "She's my daughter. I got every right to take her back. Unless, of course, you are willing to pay what she's worth." William's jaw tightened. "I already paid you once," the man sneered. "That was before I knew she would be living in a warm cabin with hot meals, before I knew she'd be some man's little prize. She ain't free, you know. You want to keep her, you pay more." William was silent for a long moment. He looked at Anna. Her eyes were wide, terrified, not of being hurt, but of being traded again. He looked at her father, his mind raced. If I give him what he wants, maybe he leaves for good. Maybe she finally gets to be free. Without a word, William turned and stepped inside. Anna stared after him, trembling. When he returned, he held a small leather pouch in his hand. Money he had saved for tools, for spring seed, for repairing the roof. He held it like it burned. Before he could speak, her father snorted. "You are a damn fool," the man spat. "Buying a scarred-up girl like her? Hell, you'd get more value from a lame horse." Then he leaned forward and hissed the words that split the cold air in half. "You take her in like that, cowboy, and you might as well be dragging trash into your home." The silence that followed was colder than the wind. Anna gasped. Her hands covered her mouth. William's expression changed, calm, replaced by fire. His eyes dark as storm clouds, he stepped forward, slow and deliberate until he stood face to face with the man. Then he said, clear, firm, and without a tremor, "She is not trash." He tossed the leather pouch to the ground, coins scattering across the snow. "She is the woman I chose, and no one calls her anything less than what she is." The man blinked. William stepped closer. "You can take your insults and get off my land, and if you ever come back, it will not be a conversation next time." The crowd had started to gather at the edge of the yard. Neighbors, townsfolk, passers-by, drawn by the noise. No one laughed. No one moved. Anna's father looked at their faces, saw the stillness, the judgment, the realization that the power he used to carry meant nothing here. With a snarl, he backed toward his wagon. "This ain't over," he growled. "You'll regret this, both of you." He climbed into the seat, yanked the reins hard. The horses turned and the wagon rolled away, kicking up dust in silence. Anna stood frozen. Then she turned to William, her eyes wet, her lips parted as if she wanted to say 100 things and none at all. But she did not need to speak. He walked over and gently touched her hand. He looked down at their fingers. No one had ever fought for her. No one had ever chosen her. Not for love, not for worth, but simply because she was her. And in that moment, as the snow returned and the wind carried away the scent of old bitterness, Anna knew something she had never dared believe. She was not broken. She was not a mistake. She was his choice. The snow had not stopped since morning. It fell thick and silent over the hills, blanketing the land in white silence. Inside the cabin, the fire crackled softly, untouched stew cooling on the table. William called her name once, then again, louder this time. But Anna was gone. He rushed outside, the wind slashing at his face. Her tracks were faint, but there, leading down the path toward the river, barely visible in the thickening snow. But enough. He followed them without hesitation. Anna walked with her arms wrapped tightly around herself, every step heavy, as if the weight in her chest had finally reached her legs. She did not know where she was going, only that she could not stay. She loved him, and that terrified her more than anything. He had stood up to her father. He had defended her in front of strangers. He had touched her scar like it was something sacred. But none of that could change the truth. She carried like a stone inside her. She was damaged, and damage did not deserve to be chosen. He deserves a clean life, a quiet one, not a girl with ghosts. So she kept walking until her knees buckled in the snow, and she collapsed near the edge of the treeline, breath catching in her throat, tears freezing on her cheeks. She did not hear the footsteps until they were almost upon her. Anna Williams' voice cut through the storm. She turned slightly, eyes wide, startled. "You should not have followed me." But he was already dropping to his knees beside her, breath coming hard, arms outstretched. He pulled her close, wrapping his coat around both of them, shielding her from the wind. "You think I could stay behind, not knowing where you were?" he said, voice shaking with cold and something deeper. "I thought," she whispered, "I thought I was a burden." His forehead pressed against hers, snow melting in his hair. "You are not a burden. I do not want to ruin your life." He shook his head. "You are the reason I want a life at all." Anna went still. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small silver ring, worn, smooth, shaped by time. "This belonged to my mother," he said quietly. "It is the only thing I have left of her." He slipped it gently onto Anna's finger. "I want you to have it." She stared at the ring, too stunned to speak. "This is not pity. This is not guilt. I am not saving you, Anna," he said. "I am choosing you." Tears welled in her eyes, not from sorrow, but from the unbearable weight of hope. "I do not know how to do this," she whispered. "I have never been loved before." "Then let me show you." He kissed her forehead, slow and certain, his hands warm despite the cold. And for the first time in her life, Anna let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she was allowed to be loved. The storm had passed, but the wind still whispered of something coming. William stood on the porch, sharpening a knife with slow, methodical strokes. Inside, Anna was kneading dough, her sleeves rolled to the elbows, humming softly under her breath. Something light, something new. Then came the sound. Hooves, wheels, shouting. William dropped the knife. Anna stepped to the window just as the wagon creaked into view, larger this time, pulled by 4 horses. At least 5 men rode with it, their eyes blurry, their mouths twisted in drunken delight, and leading them as if he had never left, sat her father. He dismounted before the wagon stopped, stumbling slightly but grinning as if he were about to collect on a debt. Anna stepped back from the window, blood draining from her face. William walked to the door and pulled the rifle down from the wall. "Stay inside," he said. She opened her mouth, but he shook his head. "Promise me." Anna nodded. Outside, the men fanned out, some carrying pistols, others broken bottles or knives. Her father stepped forward with exaggerated confidence, arms wide. "You had your fun, cowboy," he called. "But the game is over. I am here to take back what is mine." William stepped down from the porch, rifle held steady. "She is not yours." "Shh, that's so," the old man chuckled, then turned to his companions. "You hear that, boys? He thinks she belongs to him now." He spat in the snow. "She is still my daughter. I can do whatever I damn well please with her." "No," William said flatly. "You cannot." Her father's eyes darkened. "Then maybe I will just burn this little house to the ground and drag her out from the ashes, like the last time." That did it. William raised the rifle. "Get off my land." One of the drunkards reached for a weapon. The shot rang out fast. Too fast. Gunfire exploded in the cold morning air. William dove behind a barrel as bullets splintered the porch rail. He returned fire, hitting one of the attackers in the leg. Another charged forward with a club, but William knocked him down with the butt of the rifle. Then a sharp crack. Pain exploded in his shoulder. He staggered back, gripping his arm, blood already soaking his sleeve. The world blurred. From the cabin, the door slammed open. Anna stood in the doorway. She had William's pistol in her hand, held high, arms steady despite the shaking in her knees. Enough, she screamed. Her father turned, surprised. Anna, go back inside. She stepped down the porch steps, moving past William, who tried to grab her, but stumbled. Stay out of this, her father barked. But she did not stop. For the first time, she looked him in the eye, not with fear, not with shame, but with something fierce. I am not the scared little girl you beat into silence. She cocked the pistol. You do not own me. He laughed, but it cracked. Put that down. You do not have the spine. She took one more step. Try me. The wind went still. Then something broke in her father's face. His bluster cracked. He looked at the girl before him, and for the first time did not see something weak. He saw a woman who had been forged in fire and survived. He took a step back, then another. Crazy, he muttered. Then he turned and climbed into the wagon. Let's go, he barked at the others. The remaining men, wounded or winded, limped after him. Within minutes they were gone, disappearing over the ridge, swallowed by the silence they had tried to destroy. Anna stood still, breathing hard. William, still crouched beside the porch, looked up at her with pain in his eyes, but pride too. She turned to him and dropped to her knees. You are bleeding. He smiled even as he winced. You should see the other guys. She laughed, a breathless, stunned sound. Then carefully she helped him inside. And with the door shut, the noise behind them fading into memory, Anna felt something shift inside her. She had stood up. She had fought back. And for the first time in her life, she had won. The seasons turned. The snow melted into spring, and spring gave way to golden fields and warm winds. The trees stretched their arms again, and grass returned like an old song remembered. The cabin, once a place of hiding from storms and sorrow, began to change with them. It breathed differently now. It echoed with laughter in the mornings, quiet humming in the afternoons, and firelight reflections on the walls at night. Anna bloomed slowly, like the wildflowers that lined the fence William had built with his bare hands. Healing did not come all at once, nor did trust, but little by little her steps grew lighter. She began to meet her own reflection without looking away. Some days were still heavy, shadows tugging at her confidence, but they did not hold her like before, and William never rushed her. He matched her pace without question, without complaint. Each morning he would take her hand and lead her out to watch the sunrise. He built a bench beneath the oak tree behind the cabin, carved her name into the grain like a quiet promise. He taught her how to shoot with calm hands, how to ride with the wind in her hair, how to let herself laugh without apology. Then one evening, her voice barely above a whisper, she told him, I'm with child. He did not speak. He knelt, his forehead pressed gently to her belly, arms encircling her, with a reverence that shook her to the core. From that night on, he placed his hand on her stomach every evening, whispering stories and promises into the growing life inside her. You are going to be so loved, he would murmur. Anna would lie beside him, her hand resting over his, tears sometimes slipping from her lashes, not from fear, but from the unfamiliar weight of peace. When the day came, it came fast. Rain slammed the windows. Thunder rolled across the sky. William moved with quiet urgency, boiling water, wrapping blankets, never leaving her side. He held her hand through the waves of pain, wiped her brow and whispered, You can do this. You already survived worse. Hours passed in aching blur, then silence, then the softest cry. William's hands trembled as he lifted their child, small, red, and breathing in the world, and held the baby against his chest. Anna watched, eyes flooded. When he turned to her, voice breaking, he said, You are more beautiful now than the day I met you. He lowered his forehead to hers, their baby cradled between them. You are my miracle. Anna laughed through tears that tasted of joy. Days later, with the baby asleep in the cradle William had carved, Anna stood before the mirror. The scar was still there. It always would be. But now it was not the first thing she saw. She saw strength. She saw love. She saw home. Behind her in the mirror's reflection stood a man who looked at her like she was made of light. She turned to him. Thank you, she whispered, for always seeing me the way you do. Then resting her hand gently over his heart, she added, for never looking away. In a world where scars are seen before souls, Anna and William chose to look deeper and love harder. Their story is not just about survival, it's about redemption, devotion, and how even the most broken heart can become a home. If this story touched you, let us know in the comments. What would you say to someone who's forgotten how worthy they are of love? And if you believe that love, real, raw, and healing, can bloom even in the harshest places, hit that like button, subscribe to Wild West Love Stories, and ring the bell so you never miss a tale from the heart of the frontier. Because out here, where bullets missed but hearts didn't, love always finds its way home.